The last section of Truth in Lending Act out of the Code of Federal Regulations, starting at 1025.59, reevaluation of rate increases. A, the general rule, 1, evaluation of increased rate. If a card issuer increases the APR that applies to a credit card account under an open-end, non-home secured consumer credit plan based on the credit risk of the consumer, market conditions, or other factors, or increased such a rate on or after January 1 of 2009 and 45 days advance notice of the rate increase is required pursuant to 1026.9 C2 or G, the card issuer must evaluate the factors described in paragraph D of this section and Roman numeral 2. Based on its review of such factors, reduce the annual percentage rate applicable to the consumer's account as appropriate. Number 2, rate reductions. Roman numeral 1, timing. If a card issuer is required to reduce the rate applicable to the account pursuant to paragraph A1 of this section, the card issuer must reduce the rate not later than 45 days after completion of the evaluation described in paragraph rate reductions. Timing. If a card issuer is required to reduce the rate applicable to an account pursuant to paragraph A1 of this section, A being the general rule, 1 being evaluation of increased rate. The card issuer must reduce the rate not later than 45 days after completion of the evaluation described in paragraph A1. Roman numeral 2, applicability of rate reduction. Any reduction in an APR required pursuant to paragraph A1 of this section shall apply to A, any outstanding balances to which the increased rate described in paragraph A1 of this section has been applied, and B, new transactions that occur after the effective date of the rate reduction that would otherwise have been subject to the increased rate. Letter B, policies and procedures. A card issuer must have reasonable written procedures and policies in place to conduct the review described in paragraph A of this section. C, timing. A card issuer that is subject to paragraph A of this section must conduct the review described in paragraph A1 of this section not less frequently than once every 6 months after the rate increase. Letter D, factors. 1. In general, except as provided in paragraph D2 of this section, a card issuer must review either 1, Roman numeral 1, the factors on which the increase in the APR was originally based, or Roman numeral 2, the factors that the card issuer currently considers when determining the APR applicable to similar new credit card accounts under an open-end non-home secured consumer credit plan. Number 2, rate increases imposed between January 1, 2009 and February 21 of 2010. For rate increases imposed between those dates, an issuer must consider the factors described in paragraph D1, Roman numeral 2, when conducting the first 2 reviews required under paragraph A of this section, unless the rate increase subject to paragraph A of this section was based solely upon factors specific to the consumer, such as a decline in the consumer credit rate, credit risk, and the consumer's delinquency of default, or a violation of the terms of the account. Letter E, rate increases due to delinquency. If an issuer increases the rate applicable to a consumer's account pursuant to 1026.55(b)(4) based on the card issuer not receiving the consumer's required minimum periodic payment within 60 days after the due date, the issuer is not required to perform the review described in paragraph A of the section prior to the 6th payment due date after the effective date of the increase. However, if the APR applicable to the consumer's account is not reduced pursuant to 1026-55B4 Roman numeral 2, the card issuer must perform the review described in paragraph A of this section. The first such review must occur no later than 6 months after the sixth payment due following the effective date of the rate increase. Letter F, determination of obligation to review factors. The obligation to review factors described in paragraph A and D of this section ceases to apply, 1, if the issuer reduces the annual percentage rate applicable to the credit card account under an open-end, non-home secured consumer credit plan to the rate applicable immediately prior to the increase, or if the rate applicable immediately prior to the increase was a variable rate, to a variable rate determined by the same formula, index and margin, that was used to calculate the rate applicable immediately prior to the increase, or number 2, if the issuer reduces the APR to a rate that is lower than the rate described in paragraph F1 of this section. G. Acquired accounts. Number 1. General. Except as provided in paragraph G2 of this section. The section applies to credit card accounts that have been acquired by the card issuer from another card issuer. A card issuer that complies with this section by reviewing the factors described in paragraph D1I must review the factors considered by the card issuer from which it acquired the accounts in connection with the rate increase. Number 2, review of acquired portfolio. If, not later than 6 months after the acquisition of such accounts, a card issuer reviews all of the credit card accounts it acquires in accordance with the factors that it currently considers in determining the rates applicable to its similar new credit card accounts. Roman numeral 1, except as provided in paragraph G2, Roman numeral 3, the card issuer is required to conduct reviews described in paragraph A of the section only for rate increases that are imposed as a result of its review under this paragraph. See section 1026.9 and 1026.55 for additional requirements regarding rate increases on acquired accounts. Roman numeral 2, except as provided in paragraph G2, Roman numeral 3 of this section, the card issuer is not required to conduct reviews in accordance with paragraph A of this section for any rate increase made prior to the card issuer's acquisition of such accounts. Roman numeral 2, if, as a result of the card issuer's review, an account is subject to or continues to be subject to an increased rate as a penalty or due to the consumer's delinquency or default, the requirements of paragraph A of a section apply. Letter H. Exceptions. Number 1, Service Member Civil Relief Act exception. The requirements of this section do not apply to increases in an annual percentage rate that were previously decreased pursuant to SCRA, provided that such a rate increase is made in accordance with 1026-55B6. Exceptions. Number 2, charge-off accounts. The requirements of this section do not apply to accounts that the card issuer has charged off in accordance with loan loss provisions. Section 1026.60, credit and charge card applications and solicitations. Letter A, general rules. The card issuer shall provide the disclosures required under this section on or with a solicitation or an application to open a credit or charge card account. Number 1, definition of solicitation. For purposes of this section, the term solicitation means an offer by the card issuer to open a credit or charge card account that does not require the consumer to complete an application. A firm offer of credit, as defined in Section 603(1) of the Fair Credit Reporting Act for a credit or charge card, is a solicitation for purposes of this section. 2, form of disclosures, tabular format. Roman numeral 1, the disclosures in paragraphs B1 through 5, except for B1, Roman numeral 4B, and B7 through 15 of the section made pursuant to C, D2, E1, or F of the section generally shall be in the form of a table with headings, content, and format substantially similar to any of the applicable tables found in G10 in Appendix G to this part. Roman numeral 2, the table described in paragraph A2I of this section shall contain only the information required or permitted by this section. Other information may be presented on or with an application or solicitation, provided such information appears outside the required table. Disclosures required by paragraphs B1 Roman numeral 4B, B1 Roman numeral 4C, and B6 of this section must be placed directly beneath the table. Roman numeral 4, when a tabular format is required, any annual percentage rate required to be disclosed pursuant to paragraph B1 of this section, any introductory rate required to be disclosed pursuant to paragraph B1 of this, Roman numeral 2 of this section, any rate that will apply after a premium initial rate expires required to be disclosed under paragraph B1 numeral 3 of this section, and a fee or percentage amounts or maximum limits on fee disclosures disclosed pursuant to paragraphs B2, B4, B8 through B13 of the section must be disclosed in bold text. However, bold text shall not be used for the amount of any periodic fee disclosed pursuant to paragraph B2 of this section that is not an annualized amount, and other annual percentage rates or fee amounts disclosed in the table. Roman numeral 5, for an application or solicitation that is accessed by the consumer in electronic form, the disclosures required under the section may be provided to the consumer in electronic form on or with the application or solicitation. Roman numeral 4a, except as provided in paragraph A2, Roman numeral 4b of this section, the table described in A2, Roman numeral 1 of this section must be provided in a prominent location on or with an application or solicitation. Letter B, under Roman numeral 5, I guess, if the table described in paragraph A2, Roman numeral 1 of this section is provided electronically, it must be provided in close proximity to the application or solicitation. Number 3, fees based on a percentage. If the amount of any fee required to be disclosed under the section is determined on the basis of a percentage of another amount, the percentage used and the identification of the amount against of the amount of the fee. Number 4, fees that vary by state. Card issuers that impose fees referred to in paragraphs B8 through 12 of the section that vary by state may, at the issuer's option, disclose the table required in paragraph A2I of this section. The specific fee applicable to the consumer's account or the range of fees if the disclosure includes a statement that the amount of the fee varies by state and refers the consumer to a disclosure provided with a table where the amount of the fee applicable to the consumer's account is disclosed. A card issuer may not list fees for multiple states in the table. 5. Exceptions. This section does not apply to home equity plans accessible by a credit or charge card that are subject to the requirements of 102640. Overdraft lines of credit tied to asset accounts accessed by check guarantee cards or by debit cards. Lines of credit accessed by check guarantee cards or by debit cards that can be used only at automated teller machines. Lines of credit accessed solely by account numbers. Additions of a credit or charge card to an existing open-end plan. General purpose applications unless the application or material accompanying it indicates that it can be used to open a credit or charge card account, or Roman numeral 7, consumer initiated requests for applications. Letter B, required disclosures. The card issuer shall disclose the items in this paragraph on or with an application or a solicitation in accordance with the requirements of paragraphs C, D, E1, or F of this section. The credit card issuer shall disclose all applicable items in this paragraph except for paragraph B7 of the section. A charge card issuer shall disclose the applicable terms in paragraph B2, 4, 7 through 12, and 15 of this section. Number 1, annual percentage rate. Under B, each periodic rate which is required disclosures. Each periodic rate that may be used to compute the finance charge on an outstanding tolerance for purchases, a cash advance, or a balance transfer expressed as an annual percentage rate as determined by 1026.14b. When more than one rate applies for a category of transactions, the range of balances to which each rate is applicable shall also be disclosed. The annual percentage rate for purchases disclosed pursuant to this paragraph shall be in at least 16-point type except for the following: oral disclosures of the annual percentage rate for purchases or a penalty rate that may apply on the occurrence of more than one specific event. Roman numeral 1, variable rate information. If a rate disclosed under paragraph B1 of the section is a variable rate, the card issuer shall also disclose the fact that the rate may vary and how the rate is determined. In determining how the applicable rate will be determined, the card issuer must identify the type of index or formula that is used in setting the rate, the value of the index, and the amount of the margin that are used to calculate the variable rate should not be disclosed in the table. A disclosure of the applicable limitations on rate increases shall not be included in the table. Discounted initial rate. If the initial rate is an introductory rate, as that term is defined in 102616 G2 Roman numeral 2, the card issuer must in the table the introductory rate, the time period during which the introductory rate will remain in effect, and must use the term introductory or intro in immediate proximity to the introductory rate. The card issuer also must disclose the rate that would otherwise apply to the account pursuant to paragraph B1 of the section. Where the rate is not tied to an index or formula, the card issuer must disclose the rate that will apply after the introductory rate expires. In a variable rate account, the card issuer must disclose a rate based on an applicable index or formula in accordance with the accuracy requirements set forth in paragraph C2, D3, and E4 of this section as applicable. Roman numeral 3, premium initial rate. If the initial rate is temporary and is higher than the rate that will apply after the temporary rate expires, the card issuer must disclose the premium initial rate pursuant to paragraph B1 of the section and the time period during which the premium initial rate will remain in effect. Consistent with paragraph B1 of the section, the initial premium rate for purchases must be in at least 16-point type. The issuer must also disclose in the table the rate that will apply after the premium rate expires in at least 16-point type. Roman numeral 4, penalty rates. A, in general, except as provided in paragraph A1, Roman numeral 4, B and C of this section, if a rate may increase as a penalty for one or more events specified in the account agreement, such as a late payment or an extension of credit that exceeds the credit limit, the card issuer must disclose pursuant to this paragraph B1 the increased rate that may apply, a brief description of the event or events that may result in the increased rate, and a brief description of how long the increased rate will remain in effect. B, introductory rates. If the issuer discloses an introductory rate as that term is defined in 1026-16 G2 Roman numeral 2 in the table, or in a written or electronic promotional material accompanying applications or solicitations subject to paragraph C or E of this section, the issuer must briefly disclose directly beneath the table the circumstances, if any, under which the introductory rate may be revoked and the type of rate that will apply after the introductory rate is revoked. C, employee preferential rates. If a card issuer discloses in the table a preferential annual percentage rate for which only employees of the card issuer, employees of a third party, or other individuals with similar affiliations with the card issuer or third party, such as executive officers, directors, or principal shareholders, are eligible, the card issuer must briefly disclose directly beneath the table the circumstances under which such preferential rate may be revoked and the rate that will apply after such preferential rate is revoked. Roman numeral 5. Rates that depend on consumers' creditworthiness. If a rate cannot be determined at the time disclosures are given because the rate depends, at least in part, on a later determination of the creditworthiness of the consumer, the card issuer must disclose specific rates or the range of rates that could apply, and the statement that the rate for which the consumer may qualify at account opening will depend on the consumer's creditworthiness and other factors if applicable. If the rate that depends, at least in part, on a later determination of the consumer's creditworthiness is a penalty rate, as described in paragraph B1 Roman numeral 4 of this section, the card issuer at its option may disclose the highest rate that could apply instead of disclosing the specific rates or the range of rates that could apply. Roman numeral 6. APRs that vary by state. Issuers imposing APRs that vary by state may, at the issuer's option, disclose in the table the specific APR applicable to the consumer's account or the range of the annual percentage rates. If the disclosure includes a statement that the annual percentage rate varies by state and refers the consumer to a disclosure provided with the table where the annual percentage rate applicable to the consumer's account is disclosed, a card issuer may not list APRs for multiple states in the table. Number 2, fees for issuance or availability. Roman numeral 1. Any annual or other periodic fee that may be imposed for the issuance or availability of a credit or charge card, including any fee based on account activity or inactivity, how frequently it will be imposed, and the annualized amount of the fee. Roman numeral 2. Any non-periodic fee that relates to opening an account, a card issuer must disclose that the fee is a one-time fee. Number 3. Fixed finance charge, minimum interest charge. Any fixed finance charge and a brief description of the charge. Any minimum interest charge if it exceeds $1 that could be imposed during a billing cycle, and a brief description of the charge. The $1 threshold amount shall be adjusted periodically by the Bureau to reflect changes in the Consumer Price Index. The Bureau shall calculate each year a price level adjusted minimum interest charge using the Consumer Price Index in effect on June 1 of that year. When the cumulative change in the adjusted minimum value derived from applying the annual consumer price level to the current minimum interest charge threshold has risen by a whole $1. The minimum interest charge will be increased by $1. The issuer may, at its option, disclose in the table minimum interest charges below this threshold. Number 4, transaction charges. A transaction charge imposed by the card issuer for the use of the card for purchases. Number 5, grace period. The date by which the period within which any credit extended for purchases may be repaid without incurring a finance charge due to a periodic interest rate and any conditions on the availability of the grace period. If no grace period is provided, the fact must be disclosed. If the length of the grace period varies, the card issuer may disclose the range of days, the minimum number of days, or the average number of days in the grace period. If the disclosure is identified as a range, minimum, or average, and disclosing in the tabular format a grace period that applies to all types of purchases, the phrase "how to avoid paying interest on purchases" shall be used as a heading for the row describing the grace period. If a grace period is not offered on all types of purchases and disclosing this fact in the tabular format, the phrase "paying interest" shall be used as the heading for the row describing this fact. Number 6, balance computation method. The name of the balance computation method listed in paragraph G of this section that is used to determine the balance for purchases on which the finance charge is computed, or an explanation of the method used if it is not listed. In determining the balance computation method to disclose, the card issuer shall assume that the credit extended for purchases will not be repaid within the grace period, if any. Number 7, statement on charge card payments. A statement that charges incurred by use of the charge card when due are when the periodic statement is received. 8, cash advance fee. Any fee imposed for an extension of credit in the form of cash or its equivalent. Late payment fee. Any fee imposed for a late payment over the limit fee. Any fee imposed for exceeding credit limit. 11, balance transfer fee. A fee imposed to transfer an outstanding balance. 12, return payment fee. Any fee imposed by the card issuer for a return payment. 13, required insurance, debt cancellation, or debt suspension coverage. Roman numeral 1, a fee for insurance described in 1026.4b7 or debt cancellation or suspension coverage described in 1026.4b10 if the insurance or debt cancellation or suspension coverage is required as part of the plan. And Roman numeral 2, a cross-reference to any additional information provided about insurance or coverage accompanying the application or solicitation as applicable. Number 14, available credit. If a card issuer requires fees for the issuance or availability of credit described in paragraph B2 of this section, or requires a security deposit for such credit, and the total amount of those required fees and/or security deposit that will be imposed and charged to the account when the account is opened is 15% or more of the minimum credit limit for the card, a card issuer must disclose the available credit remaining after these fees or security deposit are debited into the account, assuming that the consumer receives the minimum credit limit. In determining whether the 15% threshold test is met, the issuer must only consider fees for issuance or availability of credit or security deposit that are required. If fees for issuance or availability are optional, these fees should not be considered in determining whether the disclosure must be given. Nonetheless, if the 15% threshold test is met, the issuer, in providing the disclosure, must disclose the amount of available credit calculated by excluding those optional fees and the available credit including those optional fees. This paragraph does not apply with respect to fees for security deposits that are not debited to the account. Good, because I have no idea what they're talking about. Number 15, website reference. A reference to the website established by the Bureau and a statement that consumers may obtain on the website information about shopping for and using credit cards. Until January 1 of 2013, issuers may substitute for this reference a reference to the website established by the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, as it should be. Letter C, direct mail and electronic applications and solicitation. 1. General. The card issuer shall disclose the applicable items in paragraph B of this section on or with an application or solicitation that is mailed to consumers or provided to consumers in electronic form. 2. Accuracy. Roman numeral 1. Disclosures in direct mail applications and solicitations must be accurate as of the time the disclosures are mailed. The accurate variable APR is 1 in effect within 60 days before mailing. Roman numeral 2. Disclosures provided in electronic form must be accurate as of the time they are sent in the case of disclosures sent to a consumer's email address or as of the time they are viewed by the public. In the case of disclosures made available at a location such as the card issuer's website, an accurate variable APR provided in electronic form is 1 in effect within 30 days before it is sent to a consumer's email address or viewed by the public as applicable. D. Telephone applications and solicitations. Oral disclosure. The card shall disclose orally the information in paragraphs B1 through 7 and B14 of the section to the extent applicable in a telephone application or solicitation initiated by the card issuer. Can we just go back and think on the fact that an accurate variable APR provided in electronic form is one in effect within 30 days before it is sent to a consumer's email address or viewed by the public. What that means is, let's just say Wall Street Journal Prime Index changes tomorrow and my bank wants to send out an advertisement. We've been planning one for the day after tomorrow. And considering the Wall Street Journal Prime Index just changed, we have to change our solicitation and wait 29 days before we send it to consumers. That doesn't make any sense. Nevertheless, D is about telephone applications and disclosures. There's an oral disclosure. Number 2, alternative disclosure. The oral disclosure in paragraph D1 of this section need not be given if the card issuer either Roman numeral 1A does not impose the fee described in paragraph B2 of the section, or B imposes such a fee but provides the consumer the right to reject the plan consistent with 1026.5 B1 Roman numeral 4, and the card issuer discloses in writing within 30 days after the consumer requests the card, but in no event later than the delivery of the card, the following: A, the applicable information in paragraph B of the section, and B, as applicable, the fact that the consumer has the right to reject the plan and not be obligated to pay fees described in paragraph B2 or any other fees or charges until the consumer has used the account and made a payment on the account after receiving the billing statement. Number 3, accuracy. Roman numeral 1, the oral disclosures under paragraph D1 of this section must be accurate as of the time they are given. Roman numeral 2, the alternative disclosures under D2 of this section generally must be accurate as of the time they are mailed or delivered. A variable APR is one that is accurate if it was in effect at the time the disclosures are mailed or delivered. Thank you. Or B, in effect as of a specified time, which rate is then updated from time to time, but no less frequently than each calendar month. Letter E, application solicitations made available to the general public. The card issuer shall provide disclosures to the extent applicable on or with an application or solicitation that is made available to the general public, including one containing a catalog, magazine, or other generally available publication. The disclosure shall be provided in accordance with paragraph E1 or E2 of this section. 1. Disclosure of required credit information. The card issuer may disclose in a prominent location on the application or solicitation the following: I, the applicable information in paragraph B of the section, Roman numeral 2, the date the required information was printed, including a statement that the required information was accurate as of that date and is subject to change after that date, and Roman numeral 3, a statement that the consumer should contact the card issuer for any change in the required information since it was printed, and a toll-free telephone number. Roman numeral, well, I just scrolled too far. Telephone number or mailing address for that purpose. Number 2, no disclosure of credit information. If none of the items in paragraph B of this section is provided on or with the application or solicitation, the card issuer may state in a prominent location on the application or solicitation the following: Roman numeral 1, there are no costs associated with the use of the card, and Roman numeral 2, the consumer may contact the card issuer to request specific information about the cost along with the toll-free and telephone number and mailing address for that purpose. Number 3, prompt response to requests for information. Upon receiving a request for any information referred to in this paragraph, the card issuer shall promptly and fully disclose the information requested. Number 4, accuracy. The disclosure given pursuant to paragraph E1 of this section must be accurate as the date of printing. A variable APR is accurate if it was in effect within 30 days before printing. Number F, in-person applications and solicitations. A card issuer shall disclose the information in paragraph B of this section to the extent applicable on or with an application or solicitation that is initiated by a card issuer and given to the consumer in person. A card issuer complies with the requirements of this paragraph if the issuer provides disclosures in accordance with paragraph C1 and E1 of this section. Letter G, balance computation methods defined. The following methods may be described by name. Methods that differ due to variations such as the allocation of payments, whether the finance charge begins to accrue on the transaction date or the date of posting a transaction, the existence or length of a grace period, or whether the balance is adjusted by charges such as late payment fees, annual fees, and unpaid finance charges do not constitute separate balance computation methods. 1 Roman numeral 1, average daily balance, including new purchases. This balance is figured by adding the outstanding balance, including new purchases, and deducting payments and credits for each day in the billing cycle, and then dividing the number of days in the billing cycle. Roman numeral 2, average daily balance, excluding new purchases. The balance is figured by adding the outstanding balance, excluding new purchases, and deducting payments and credits for each day in the billing cycle, and then dividing by the number of days in the billing cycle. Number 2, adjusted balance. This balance is figured by deducting payments and credits made during the billing cycle from the outstanding balance at the beginning of the billing cycle. 3, previous balance. This balance is the outstanding balance at the beginning of the billing cycle. And 4, daily balance. For each day in the billing cycle, this balance is figured by taking the beginning balance each day, adding new purchases, and subtracting any payments and credits. I just finished reading the Truth in Lending Act, beginning to end.